Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning meeting for Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. If everyone could please rise for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, our way for business tonight, if everybody could just make sure that their phones are on vibrate or off, we would appreciate it. We'll go right into our regular meeting. Oh, I have a commissioner missing, so for Commissioner LeBlanc, we'll seat Commissioner Bernstein. Okay. Regular meeting, public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda? Now would be the time. If you are interested, please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move right into our new business. We have application 21-34P, Pete's RV Parking and TNC renewal. Do we have someone here from the applicant? Please step forward. Yeah, we have a sign-in sheet on the right there. If you could just sign in either before or after if you come up.
Oh, gotcha.
And if you could speak into the microphone. Does that microphone go up on the podium?
I think it's...
No, put it right up on the podium so you're not bending over. Just lift it up and put it right on the podium.
Gotcha. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Hello, I'm David Gould from 395 John Fitch. Just wanted to continue my permit as it's been for the past 2 years on the property for Pete's RV to park roughly 35 RVs on the location, which I don't even know if he does half of that amount, but.
Okay. Is that complete your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Then at this time, I'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for renewal of a 2-year temporary conditional permit for the storage of campers on approximately about a half acre of land located at 395 John Fitch Boulevard, which is the northerly side of Chapel Road in our general commercial zone. The owner here owns the land and hopes to do development plans on it in the future, but I think as he represented 2 years ago, there is a need for the adjacent property owner, Pete's RV, to have camping storage. It kind of works out during this period of time when he's not ready to build to use it as a lot for storage. So that is the request 2 years ago and a continuing request today. I think I counted like 28 campers on it. I think we originally thought there'd be up to 35, but they've kept it under 30 campers. We did have a request that they use a golf cart to go in between the facility and not come out onto Route 5. There's no sign of any activity of any cars coming out onto Route 5 to go into that lot. So I think they've kept it pretty nice. We did meet with them initially because there was some clearing and grading that had to occur 2 years ago. Staff was involved with that, and we've had no concerns or complaints filed with our office related to this application. The wording of the temporary conditional permit regulation is that temporary conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if the judge of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served and appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured and traffic and other hazards do not result from such use. Renewals are handled at the regular meeting and do not require a public hearing. If this application is approved, there are no modifications requested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, we'll turn to commissioners. I'll start with Commissioner Flagg.
No comment.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
No questions.
Commissioner Bonzani.
No questions.
Commissioner Foley.
No questions.
Commissioner Wagner.
No question.
Commissioner Cavagnero.
No comment?
Commissioner Bernstein?
I wish we had closed captioning for this. I'm really struggling to hear you, Michelle, so I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. I have no comments or questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and I just have one comment on the possible approval. I really think number 2 should read, the temporary and conditional permit will expire on 9/14/23 and will have to be renewed by that time if the use is to continue, rather than at that time. Other than that, I don't have anything else. So, commissioners, motion would be in order. I don't see any lights. Commissioner Wagner.
I move that we approve application 21-34P, temporary, a 2-year temporary conditional approval for Pete's RV Storage T&C for the storage of recreational vehicles at 395 John Fitch Boulevard. The storage area is limited to 30 campers and must be accessed through the adjacent lot to the north. The temporary and conditional permit will expire on September 14, 2023, and will have to be renewed by that time if the use is to continue.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Steve, did you want to speak on that? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Continued success. Okay, our next application is application 21-35P, Mangino Temporary and Conditional Permit Renewal. Do we have somebody here to present that? Please step forward. If you could introduce yourself and tell us about your renewal.
My name is William Mangino. I am the property owner, and this is a in-law apartment that's been 2-year renewal for, I don't know, I think 25 or 30 years now. And it's just a adjacent building with 2 apartments in it.
Okay. Does that complete your,
Yes, I guess so.
okay, then we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. This is a request for the renewal of a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for 2 in-law apartments at 272 Pierce Road in the rural residential zone. These apartments were originally approved and created through a temporary and conditional permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals in 1989. The most recent approval expired at July 9th of 2021. I will state for the record, the applicant did file his renewal request with us July 2nd. It's taken that long to make a commission agenda. Testament to how busy you are. The reason that this is in front of you is our regulations allow for 1 accessory apartment or 1 in-law apartment, not 2. So this has always been handled as a temporary and conditional permit, like I said, since 1989. For the record, the wording of the temporary conditional permit is that temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the commission for use which is not specified elsewhere in these regulations for a period not to exceed 2 years. If this application is approved, the planning department would recommend the standard approval conditions that have been in place all these years. This approval is for 2 in-law apartments for a family member or relative only. When the in-law apartments are no longer occupied by a relative or family, the apartments cannot be treated as a second dwelling unit. Instead, the kitchen must be removed and living areas converted into the other living space for the main dwelling. The permit will expire in 2 years, 9/14/2023, and will have to be renewed at that time if the use is to be continued. Owner of the property must reside in an apartment or the main dwelling unit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to turn to commissioners, but I'd just like to say first, before we get into the weeds, this is being put forward under our current regulations, okay? So the new regulations going forward have not been adopted yet. So this is under our current regulations, okay? I hope that eliminates some of the questions. So I'll turn to Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, I have no questions.
Okay, Commissioner Cavagnero,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Wagner.
Even though we'd be changing our regulations, this has got 2 apartments. I think by right, only one will be required
Yeah,
by
it would
the
still
state.
have to be handled through
T&C.
a T&C or a variance or something, yeah.
Thank you.
You're correct.
Commissioner Foley,
No questions.
Commissioner Bonzani,
No questions.
Commissioner Dexter,
No questions.
Commissioner Flagg. No questions. Okay, and I just have a question. Who currently lives in each unit?
My brother and his son.
Excuse me, could you?
My brother and
Talking-
his son, oh, I'm sorry, my brother and his son,
Okay, in each unit?
one
There's-
in each.
Okay, there's one in each, and then do you live in the main?
I live in the main house.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have nothing further. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion that we approve application 21-35P, Mangino in-law apartments. One, this approval is for 2 in-law apartments for a family member / relative only. When the in-law apartments are no longer occupied by a relative of the family, the apartments cannot be treated as a second dwelling unit. Instead, the kitchens must be removed and the living areas must be converted into other living space for the main dwelling. And number 2, this permit will expire in 2 years on September 14, 2023, and will have to be renewed before or at this time if the use is to be continued. Owner of the property must reside in the apartment or the main dwelling unit.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on our agenda is application 21-45P, Kathy Pichetto, LLC. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I'm just going to sign in really quick. Good evening. My name is Kathy Pichetto, and I'm here to renew my business permit for a major home occupation. Nothing's changed since my last request for a permit.
Okay. Is that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. This is an application for the renewal of a 5-year major home occupation to operate an electrolysis office at 89 Glenwood Road in the A30 zone. This permit was originally granted in 2001, was renewed 2006, 11, 16, and again now here in 21. At the time of the original application, the applicant indicated have up to 10 clients a day. I assume that's still accurate. The operation of the business is restricted to the present owner. That was part of the original approval conditions. The hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, Saturday 9 to 3, closed on Sundays. Public sewer and water serve the home. The existing parking requirement is being met within the existing driveway at the home. Applicant has a 2-square-foot wooden sign on the light post on the property. If this application is approved, the applicant would be required to return the commission for renewal. I think the date should be 9/14/2026. I think I may have given you a wrong date on your approval condition listing there, but that would be a 5-year renewal date. We have had no concerns expressed in our office at all related to this business. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, Commissioner Flagg, any questions, comments, concerns?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter?
I know Michelle mentioned the 10 clients a day. Are the hours still good for you?
They are. Actually, I've cut them back a little bit, but
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bonzani? No questions. Commissioner Foley?
No questions.
Commissioner Wagner?
No questions.
Commissioner Cavagnero?
Yeah, just a quick question. For item 2 on the paper that we received, like mentioned, it says 10 clients a day. Is that figure from from after COVID, for example? Has that number changed since COVID has happened?
It's been less than that because of COVID.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
So Kathy, other than COVID, how's business?
Good. I mean, it's as good as it can be with this. There's a lot of people scared, you know, to come in and, you know, I have a lot of older clientele that are really nervous. So it definitely has businesses slowed down, but it's good. I mean, I don't have the overhead, so that's been good for us.
So I know Commissioner Dexter asked about the hours, but it's common for us just to check in and with home businesses to make sure that that still works for you.
It
No
does.
need to increase or decrease.
I've cut back a lot. I'm not working Saturdays, and I try to finish about 4 o'clock. But I figured, you know, just in case something changed, I do have that flexibility where I have the option if I wanted to work till 5.
Continued success. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Commissioner Wagner?
I move we approve application 21-45P, Pachetto, major home occupation. The operation of the business is restricted to the present owner. The permit will expire on September 14, 2026, and will have to be renewed by that time. The hours of operation are limited to Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Sunday closed.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Continued
Have a
success.
good evening.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is number 4, application 21-29P, Davis re-subdivision. They're requesting for a 90-day extension to file Mylars in the office of the town clerk.
Actually, it's a 2-day, or 2 90-day requests if you look at the letter. We didn't pick up on that, so,
Okay,
thank you.
and I don't think we have a problem with moving forward with that. So, commissioners, what's your pleasure? Was that you, Commissioner Flagg? Okay, light, please. Commissioner Flagg.
Yeah, on the agenda, it shows that this is for a 90-day extension, right, Michelle?
2 90-day
Yes, but the letter
90
requests 2
Yeah,
90-day
90-day extension
extensions.
for Mylars?
Yeah.
But on the design professional letter, it says 2 consecutive 90-day extensions.
Yeah, that is correct, and they're allowed up to 2 consecutive, so we did not pick up that on the agenda. So their request is for 2 consecutive 90-day extensions, which is what's allowed under the law. So that's what you should take action on tonight, is their request.
Okay. All right, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, if anyone has a motion or,
I'll make a motion to approve application 21-29P, the Davis re-subdivision, for 2 consecutive 90-day extension to file the Mylars.
Second.
okay, we have motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, point of order, if I may.
Sure.
The agenda indicates that this is being broadcast on Channel 16. I've been notified that it is not. I don't know what is going on with that, but I just wanted you to know that we don't seem to be broadcasting on Channel 16.
Okay. Just maybe,
I will contact IT to see if I can get you a reason why. People should know this is going to be up on the web, though. If for some reason they miss it tonight, it will be available to be viewed on the web.
yep. And
But I will see if I can get a hold of someone and find out.
I just want to make everybody aware, in case anybody isn't, if you are looking at your phones during a meeting, then that conversation that you look at is FOI-able. So it can be requested from Freedom of Information. So just so you're aware, okay?
Okay, I did get information already sent to me by Michael Lehman, our IT guy. He says it's live on Facebook, YouTube, and Swagit, which is the town's website. He's contacted the Cox rep to find out why it's not live on Cox. But that is the status, so we are live on some mediums.
Okay. All right, then we're gonna move forward here. We've got number 5, application 21-56P, UW Vintage Hill 2, and it's a request to establish the fee in lieu of open space for the subdivision at $27,500. Does that happen during town council meetings too? This is a new system, it sounds. Okay. Anyways, $27,500, which represents 10% of the appraised value of the subdivision. Would anyone like to make that motion? I'm hearing crickets. Commissioner Dexter.
Okay, I move that we approve application 21-56P, UW Vintage Hill 2, and their request to give or the approval conditions of the Vintage Hills subdivision in the amount of $27,500 for the open space as an appraisal, and that we accept that dollar amount.
Okay, so if I could just paraphrase where there's a motion to establish the fee in lieu of open space for $27,500.
Well said.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. We're moving right along here. That's great. We now have item number 6, discussion regarding the 2021 legislative change, accessory dwellings, units, and cannabis retail sales and cultivation. I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle. And
Okay, I'm gonna just hand out one last piece of paper since I didn't give you enough.
cannabis.
No, this is what we currently have. This is our bulk requirements. Part of it is how much we can cover to the lot. These are parking requirements. Then I also just included what a staff level approval looks like for in-law apartment currently. To give you a frame of reference. So what I handed out in the packets with your agenda packet was a table. And what I did in that table is I took our existing regulation and I made 2 columns out of it. One column relates to how we treat an in-law apartment, and the other column is how we treat an accessory apartment. The difference being an accessory apartment is a permanent apartment in a home, an in-law apartment is a temporary apartment. And then the third column is what the law that was just passed, Public Act 2129, states an as-of-right apartment consists of. So with this legislation that was passed, communities have a couple options. One of the options we have is to change our regulations to match what the law says. You could have it be a planning and zoning approval, like a site plan approval. As I handed out to you tonight, we currently do approvals at the staff level for in-law apartments regularly, so it could be done different ways depending on how you wanted to move forward with it. You'll notice some of the differences are square footages, what we allow versus what the state law says you have to allow. Some of the other differences are the state law says that you don't have homeowner has to occupy a unit, you can't require that. You can require things like not allowing it turn into an Airbnb. So there's some things that a town can do related to the apartments, but really at the end of the day, what the law is saying that every single-family zone is entitled to an accessory apartment. An accessory apartment is either attached to the house or it can be an apartment in the rear of the house. It does say that your zoning regulations related to setbacks apply. So, you know, you have a 20-foot setback or a 50-foot setback, those would apply. It does say your coverage ratios apply. We only allow you to cover your lot with so much building. There's a percentage there. Those things would still apply, but as of right, you would come in and apply for a permit. So you could change your regulations again to match what the state allows. That would be one way to become compliant. You could choose to opt out of this law. Now, if you choose to opt out of this law, what you're basically would do is you'd go through a public hearing process and you'd have a vote. It would have to be a 2/3 majority vote of this commission. It would also have to go to your legislative body, being the town council, go through a process with them and also have a 2/3 majority vote to opt out of the law. Some communities, just to give you an example, I've talked to a couple of their planners. Ellington, for example, has already adopted a regulation similar to what the state law has, so they're going to allow it as of right. I was talking with a planner from Windsor today. They're doing kind of a hybrid. They are going to change their regulations that are currently in place, which are similar to ours in that they have family member regulations and they have different criteria similar to what we do. They're going to change the regulations to be more in line with the law. However, they're still going to opt out of it because they still want to have things like an owner-occupied requirement. They want to have some things in them that the law does not allow you to have. And that way, they feel that they're meeting the spirit of the law and moving forward. So that is something that this commission may consider doing. If you choose to do neither of those things, come January 1st, 2023, the law is in effect, basically. So basically, the law says you can't create any new regulations in conflict with what they've listed an accessory apartment can be unless you've opted out of the law. So that's kind of where we are at this point. So there's a little bit of confusion among some of the planners out there as to what happens on January 1st, 2022. I did speak with Carrie Olson, our town attorney, today to just make sure I was on the same page with her. Our understanding is you have basically 2022 to either fix your regulations or opt out of them during that time frame. You can't adopt anything new that would be in conflict with that unless you've opted out. So as I told her, we were going to have this discussion tonight. I think the commission should move forward in whatever direction you want to move forward. If it's, you know, there's certainly several things about our current regulations just based on how we've applied them over years and how the community's reacted to them that I can certainly provide you a fair amount of feedback just to tell you, like, for example, in-law apartments. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows too much about them or where they are or who has them. They're like a non-impactful kind of apartment out there. Accessory apartments, which I think I gave you the record, we have had 18 since we put the regulation in 1990. Again, they're not one of the ones that we don't get complaints about apartments. That really, I can only think of 1 or 2 times, even through the approval process, that we had public concern on apartments. So, I mean, our experience, at least in our department, is the apartments have not been too impactful on neighborhoods. But again, how much of that is based on the criteria we have in place, you know, I can't really give you too much to that. The other thing I would just make you aware of is there's probably, you know, so I've recorded someone like 78 apartments just in what we have on file. There's probably equally that many more that are out there by variance or just out there from existing from prior or whatever that we don't know the number of. So, you know, from a perspective of community, we do offer opportunity for apartments here. So I think, you know, from that perspective, we're not one of those communities where you can't get an accessory apartment. We do have a process. So I guess I would just encourage the commission that if you're thinking that you want to opt out of the law, as strict as it is, I think there are some opportunity to change what we have in place currently right now to be a little bit more friendly to the user and also not really cause much impact within the community. And I would be glad to answer any other questions or however else you want to.
Okay,
forward this.
has there been any reading, like from the town council, if we were to opt out, if they would support something like that?
I have not had any reading of it. I have made both the town manager and the mayor aware of it.
Yep.
And I think it may be something that they'd want to have on as an agenda item to discuss.
Yeah. Okay, and if I could just start, well, Commissioner Dexter?
I just have a really quick question.
Sure.
If you opt out, is it forever? Or is it a year? Or-
Well, I mean, you could opt out and then you could later on put a regulation in place that mirrors the state law. So, I mean, if you could still make an action later on that would be, for all practical purposes, similar to the state law.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
specifically, but to me, if you wanted to change your regulations, that's something you always have the ability to do.
Okay, the way I'm reading the proposal, or the law, is if we don't opt out, if we don't do anything, it becomes by permit, could be staff, could be commissioners, and at that point, it's just one permit, and it just keeps going until it's,
It would be a permanent change to the house. It would be you'd add an apartment to a house.
right. And I've always felt it a little strange that, you know, if we have an in-law apartment, we would make somebody go through the cost of if that family member passes away and they have to return it back to regular living area without a kitchen, which is like throwing away $20,000. I had been considering making accessory apartment or in-law apartment the same regulations, and then this came along, which is along the same thought. I'm not sure how the other commissioners feel, if you feel that it would be beneficial to opt out or attempt to opt out. And again, remember, that we would have to do a 2/3 vote, but the town council would also have to support that. If we want to accept what the regulations are, do nothing, or if we want to change our regulations. I mean, if we opted out for a year in time to get our regulations changed, that's an opportunity also. But we've got to do something, otherwise, as of the first of the year, it will be the law. So I'm going to open it up. Anybody wants to speak, throw your light on,
I
please.
just want to give you one other comment related to your comment of in-law apartments. Probably that's the biggest enforcement issue we have, if anything, related to apartments, is a house going on the market that has an in-law apartment in it, because people don't want to take them out. So typically what we do is we contact the future buyer and we get them to register their in-law apartment with us. So, you know, to your point, people converting it back into single-family living space is just something that doesn't happen readily or easily. So we certainly would be in favor of it being a permanent kind of thing in a home. And then if someone buys it and doesn't want to use it, they don't have to use it.
Yeah. Just one quick question. If somebody doesn't do the permit, if they just go forward with it, how do we, how is it really known or enforced, you know,
Well,
at that point?
so we
Is
have
it
a-
through the,
we-
like the assessor, or?
Well, we have a listing of all of them, so the zoning officer sends out a letter periodically when the renewal comes up, and if it goes, there's a new owner comes back, then she investigates and sees with the new owner whether they're using it or not. So a lot of times we find out after the sale's already occurred, or periodically it'll be brought to our attention, someone calling and saying, hey, I'm looking at a house that has an in-law apartment in it. And then we'll, you know, I can't think of an in-law apartment that's ever been denied, to be honest with you, because they can be, it's a zoning permit. If you meet the criteria, you're going to be able to get it approved.
I see,
I-
we'll
well,
go
I-
Commissioner Bernstein.
A follow-up question, Ms. Schell, to what you just said. So my understanding is if you have an in-law apartment in your house, once a year or so, the homeowner gets a letter asking them to clarify how that's being used?
Every 5 years, it's a 5-year permit.
5 years, okay.
I thought I read 4 years someplace.
What
but-
happens for 4 years is that's when the accessory apartment gets a letter, and you have to reaffirm that you live either in the house or the accessory apartment. So there's 2 different processes that we have that,
So my question.
just to make it more complicated.
My question is, there doesn't seem to be an audit follow-up process to that.
I'm sorry, there doesn't seem to be what?
An
More,
audit follow-up process.
a wanted follow-up process?
Audit.
Audit, I'm sorry, well,
So
you know,
somebody or someone to make sure that what the homeowner has indicated is indeed the truth.
we generally will take a homeowner's word, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we send out a letter and they write us a letter and say, yes, it's still being used this way, we're gonna believe them, yeah. We're complaint-driven. If somebody files a complaint and, you know, says somebody's violating the zoning, we'll follow up on it, but we won't assume that based
Okay.
on, information submitted.
All set?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Commissioner Wagner.
Yeah. As I look at your table, which was very helpful, it seems to imply that you can have a separate structure. And yet, when I read the actual regulation, it just talks about the entire structure must maintain the appearance of a single-family dwelling. So, are they allowed to have a separate structure or not, and where is that in the
I
regulation?
believe you're allowed to have a separate structure, yes. Under the new law, you would be able to have a separate structure.
So the new law allows a separate structure.
Correct.
Do we currently allow a separate?
What we allow is you to take an existing outbuilding. So if you have an existing garage or barn, we allow you to convert that into a single or into an in-law apartment or an accessory apartment. The one exception to that, if you recall, over on Main Street, they were gonna do that with that barn. It was in such poor condition. You allowed them to rebuild the barn to emulate what was there originally, but the problem with that has always been is you don't allow a footprint expansion. So if it doesn't work or it can't meet the criteria, so.
That was on Ferry Lane, that one?
No, it was right on Main Street, like in the 1100s or something. I forget, on the westerly side, but yeah. The only other one that I can think of is you have one on Ellington Road. The young lady that has a hair salon also has an apartment in the building that's behind her. So you don't see, we don't know of many of them.
Personally, I've got no problem with what the state is asking for. I would go ahead and move forward with that. But that's just me. I find it very hard to distinguish between an in-law apartment and an accessory apartment until I read the fine print several times. You know, I think we pretty much conform to this. I mean, there are minor details, and actually, we have trouble when people are supposed to move out of or disassemble the in-law apartment. I agree that that's unreasonable, and it isn't happening. So I would just go ahead and get ourselves consistent with the state law.
Commissioner Bonzani?
So, reading this, I think one of the biggest changes is owner must live in primary structure apartment, and then ours says owner must live in primary. Then the state says ADU cannot be restricted to homeowner or relative apartment or primary structure. The only thing I have an issue with that is, that means anybody can buy this house and then rent this thing out to people in the primary and then people to their apartment. Is that what I'm reading, that they don't have to be?
That's how I read it as well, yes.
So that could be an issue to me.
You don't have an
because
owner
you can rent
occupancy.
that thing out to 8 people if you want, and there's no restrictions as far as that goes. And that could really upset neighbors, or there's no restriction as far as that goes. Whereas the other way, if it's a relative, you know, I mean, I think that's I think we have to look at that part of it, Steve. I mean, if somebody can buy a house, has an apartment in it, and now they rent that to, you know, as many people as they can fit into that house if they feel, you know, my kid's college has like 16 kids in you know, in an apartment. That's one thing I think we have to look at. I was reading everything else. To me, that's an issue that I think we have to discuss.
You're leaking out there?
So,
Okay. Yeah, anyone else? Commissioner Flagg?
Yeah, I've been reading this over and over, and there's an awful lot of stuff in here that could be in the future that I think it would present some problems. I'm not so sure that, the bottom one says that you gotta have no more than one space, but I don't agree with that. 2 spaces per dwelling unit, that might come into play. Also, a couple of others in here I was looking at. One of them was, where was it? Public hearing. Public hearing for detached structures. If you get a detached structure that's of good size, then some people might object to it and they might want a public hearing, and it's telling you, no, you don't have to do that. I think we ought to opt out a year and let this play and see what happens with this, because I think there's just too many changes just to go ahead and approve it as of January.
Okay. Commissioner Dexter?
I like the fact that it melds together in-law apartment and accessory apartment, because there's really no reason to have the distinctions. And so having said that, there's a lot of things in the law that I think we all could agree to move forward with right away. However, so that we still maintain some control over the proliferation of these units in our neighborhoods and everywhere else, that we just opt out, but like, what was it, Windsor is doing, moving forward to get as close as they can within this opt-out option. That would be how I would vote.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Bernstein?
I honestly don't feel like I have the basis to make an intelligent decision on this. And given that, if being asked to make a decision, I feel like I would have to go with the default, which is staying in, going with the state. I don't know why I would be agreeing to opt out if I agreed to opt out. This is something to me that would seem to require, some time to dig into it and really understand all the pros and cons. And I almost feel like we're, just getting hit with it, and we have to make a recommendation, right, to town council? Is that the point here?
No, if we move forward with, say, opting out,
Right.
then we would forward that to the town council, and they would either support it or they would reject it. But if they supported it, they would have to do it with a 2/3 majority.
Got it.
Would it be helpful if I drafted a text amendment trying to do what you're suggesting, so that you have a basis of, if you're gonna opt out, you could still say, but look, this is what we're hoping to put in place to try to meet it, so so you have some reasons why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, I think I've heard enough tonight that I could at least put a stab at putting something together. Again, I think we want an owner occupancy requirement. I think we want to make sure they don't turn into an Airbnb. Those kinds of safeguards, which I think, there's this 1,000 square feet. I think we're kind of almost there with our 700 or our 900. So I'd be happy to do that and bring it, or send it out to you guys to take a look at it, because it may be easier if you decide to go through the opt-out process to have a text amendment that you're considering at the same time to just.
Now, if we did that, would we still have our 4-year approvals or 5-year approvals? Whatever?
Well, depending on what you adopted. You might adopt something that basically wipes out the in-law apartment for need of, that's something that we'll have to, I actually mentioned that to the town attorney today. I was asking her about that, and it really depends on what you end up for a regulation, what it will do to what's existing out there.
Yeah, because part of what I like about this is it streamlines the process.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't like is it's like absolutely no control. I think there are some good things that we've developed over the years, and, you know, having the owner have one of the units, I think that's a good one, you know? I think if somebody lived next to one of these double units, the neighbors would appreciate it too, you know? So if everybody's in agreement, we can do this by consensus, but I see some lights on. Vice Chair
Well,
Foley?
like, I believe, like you said, Windsor did a hybrid. They adopted some of the state and,
Yeah, their intention is to, you know, try to write a regulation close to what the state has, but with some of the safeguards they're concerned about, and they are choosing to opt out of the state law. I mean, so, but with the understanding that they're doing this text amendment.
I think we could do the same thing, just kind of tweak it to, there are some things such as at least have a homeowner in the home or the accessory building. That way there's an interest on the property rather than somebody who buys up properties and says, okay, I own a house with a detached garage and I'm gonna rent the house to this people, you know, then it just gets out of control. I think in all honesty, I mean, that's just my opinion, but I believe that, like you said, Bart, having an interest, having a resident, an owner in one of the dwellings would be definitely one of the criteria on my end.
All set. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I was actually going to do what you recommend what you suggested, but what I'd like to see is a draft of the regulations that completely conforms to this. And maybe the changes would be in, I don't know, pick a color, red, and then the things that we've been talking about that we would do differently if we opted out, like the owner occupancy in a different color. And then we can go to the council and say, you know, let's say we decide to opt out. We can go to the council and say, this is what it's going to look like. If we don't opt out, this is what we could change. If we do opt out, everyone understands the implications of opting out that way.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, so I believe that is the consensus of the commission? Okay, great. You can move forward with that, Michelle. Thank you very much. Okay, let me just get my agenda over here. Okay, our next item is number 7, discussion regarding a residential, oh, wait a minute. No, we got still number 6, cannabis retail sales and cultivation. So that was part A, now we're on part B.
Correct. Okay, so again, I gave you just a brief snippet of the law, you know, the purposes of what zoning can do, what a local ordinance could do, reminding you how we handled medical cannabis. We handled that as an as-of-right use. We said if you're a pharmacy, we handled it like a pharmacy, which is a retail use. We handled the production of it in the industrial zone like we would any other manufacturing kind of production facility. So what we need to decide is you're kind of under the gun a little bit on this one because you have to make a decision by the end of the year. You can decide to do nothing, and if you decide to do nothing, the sale of it would be treated how the sale of alcohol occurs in your community. We allow alcoholic sales in all retail zones by permitted as of right use. So that would be the result of that. Your production facilities would occur as production facilities currently do in the industrial zone. So if you do nothing, that's what would happen. A lot of communities, I think somewhere 9 within our CROG region have gone forward and put forward a moratorium ranging anywhere from 4 to 10 months, primarily to take some time to put together, from the planners I'm talking to, most communities are going forward with a special exception or a special permit process to come up with some criteria that they want to put in moving forward, and this gives them some time to put some regulations in place before, you know, not getting them in place by the end of the year. That may be something this commission wants to consider. There are a couple towns in our region, Newington, East Hartford, Wyndham, that have already made the decision to allow it by special permit, and they're putting forward regulations related to that. My understanding from reading the law is that they do need a zoning approval before they can apply to the state, so folks are going to be looking to get that approval put in place. I know I've been contacted by several potential retailers already, so certainly people are looking at South Windsor as a potential opportunity. I did have an opportunity to briefly speak with the mayor again, and I know the concerns, or some of the concerns of the council that were expressed at a previous meeting were, not having sales located close to schools and religious facilities and those kinds of things. So just some food for thought. I think, you need to decide, first of all, whether, how you want to handle it. You might consider, if you decide to allow it by special permit or something like that, to restrict it to certain zones. Maybe, I think of our restricted commercial zone, for example, that's located in the center of town and it's located in some of our neighborhoods. Maybe restricted commercial zones don't make a lot of sense. We don't have very many of them. And like I said, you have daycares and things like that in some of those zones. Your general commercial zone is your probably your most liberal, if you will, retail zone. That's primarily along your Route 5 corridor and your Sullivan Ave corridor. Your other primary commercial zone is your Buckland Gateway zone. So those are really kind of some of the areas that if you're going to allow a retail use, there are some towns that are choosing to do it in an industrial zone. So these are some of the things that if you decide you want to move forward with it, we can investigate and I can provide you information on. I think, other than separating distances, some of the other things you probably want to consider are parking requirements and just making sure access in and out of sites, if you're going to allow it, are safe, and those kinds of things, and would be looked at through a standard site plan approval process. So.
I see Commissioner Wagner's lights on, so I'll
Thank
turn
you.
it to you, Steve.
So I guess I've got a little problem with the date of January 1st, 2022. We're like a month and a half away from an election, so we will possibly have a different commission sitting after that. So if this commission is going to do it, we have 6 weeks to do it. I don't think we have time to go through public hearings and adopt new regulations. If we allow it to split over 2 commissions, if there are any new members, we'll be like backtracking to get them brought up to speed. And then if we wait until after November 2nd, it's the same problem. We don't have enough meetings, I think, to really make this happen in an intelligent and relaxed manner by January 22nd. So I would favor doing a moratorium. I would like to see this happen. I'm actually in favor of allowing this and dealing with many of the issues that you mentioned, but I just think it's going to be very hard for us to do a good job of this either before or after the election by January 1.
I understand what you're saying, Steve. But I'm not so worried about whether there's a different commission or a different council or any of that. I think, the majority of the planning and zoning, right now it's 4, it could change, but I think we're all moving in the same direction usually. We know where we're going, what's our goal is. So tonight, I'm thinking we should just maybe talk about, however brief it is, whether or not we want to move forward with this. And Michelle, I'm just throwing a question out there, but if we do like a 1-year moratorium, does that mean that we consent to the recreational sale, or can we choose to then determine at the end of a year that we don't want to have sales in South Windsor?
You're doing a moratorium on putting a regulation in place. So I would say that you could, at that point, decide that you're not going to do it. So it gives you the time to either put a regulation in place or make that decision.
Okay, and something like that, I mean, even a moratorium, if we put a moratorium in, does that need approval from the town council?
No, a moratorium is similar to a zoning text amendment. So you would actually put a text amendment in your regulation saying you're putting a moratorium on recreational sales of cannabis until June 1st, 2022, or something like that.
Okay.
So it would go through, so you would come up with some wording, it would be sent to CROG, it would come back, you'd go through a public hearing, and it would be like a text amendment.
And the product, when it's produced, will typically be in the industrial zone, or would it be,
Typically, the manufacturing has gone on in industrial zones. That's typically where you see it in most towns. The
is that?
Production
well,
facilities.
Right now,
Right now, it's in our industrial zone. We don't have any in town, but it would be if someone were to want to do it. We have a medicinal
is it produced inside or outside?
inside,
Inside?
yes.
So like a greenhouse type building?
There with grow lights or something inside of a facility, yeah.
Okay, because,
Kind of interesting, the law that was passed says it's not considered an agricultural use. So
yeah,
it's-
and that's what I was thinking, because I was thinking, you know, is this gonna be farmed, I shouldn't say farmed, produced, whatever, on Main Street, or is it, you know, and you answered my question, thank you.
But again, you could put regulations in place related to the production facilities, you know, restricting them to industrial zones as well.
Yeah. And so, since it's gonna be produced or inside, I take it it's a year-round
I would imagine it is. yeah.
process. Okay. I know, you know, the other way I was thinking there might be security issues, or, you know, kids will be kids. But if it's in an enclosed building, I think the security would probably be fine.
You know, in our experience with the medicinal sales is the state will be putting together a really robust set of rules. And a lot of those rules are around security that's required and things like that. So that's some of what the state, you know, has to put together for these places as well. I'm sure it'll be modeled a lot on what was done for the medicinal, but I know that security has been a big priority.
Okay. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Dexter.
Thank you, Chairman Pasaconis. Which is another reason, kind of wait and see what the state's going to do, so, you know, we know what direction to take. But I wanted you to list the towns that are moving forward. You said East Hartford?
I believe East Hartford, Newington, and Wyndham.
Okay, so one
And I think
abut-
Wyndham was allowing an existing medicinal retailer to become hybrid, which is an opportunity under the law, is to allow your existing medicinal folks to do that.
So one abutting town is going to have recreational cannabis for sale.
They're going to be
If a
putting
South
in,
Windsor resident wanted to buy, they wouldn't have far to go,
correct.
theoretically. And then, what's the 3%, Michelle? 3% of the
The
sales
sales
comes-
tax comes back to the town, and there's very specific categories where the town can spend the money, but, you know, that is the incentive to the town to allow it in your community.
Is it things like, I don't know, squishy stuff like, what do you call it?
You know, different recreational kinds of programs, rehabilitation kinds of programs, so they're geared towards educational, but it's a very, you know, it's a very finite list in the law. I can certainly get that for you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Flagg.
Michelle, I wanted to know how far we can go in our options, because some towns have put this up for a referendum.
There is under the law a
you
way,
know,
there's a
and-
way
and
where a
some
community.
towns have had hearings, and some towns have pushed it all the way to a referendum. So I guess that's what I want to know, is how far can we go here?
Well, you could flat out prohibit it if you wanted to. You could prohibit sales of it in your community. The town council could do the same thing by ordinance. So it really is a lot of options available to communities. The town council could put rules in place related to where smoking could occur. They could say no smoking in public parks. So there, you know, those are some things that could be done at the town council level. I don't know if anybody was on the commission at the time, but years ago when we put an adult entertainment ordinance in place, the town council mirrored an ordinance with our zoning regulations, so they kind of complemented each other. So you could, you know, they could have an ordinance that says something related to schools and churches or whatnot. So there is opportunity for communities to put, you know, some parameters in place. You could limit the hours of operation, the type of signage you want to see. Those are some of the things I think, you know, if you're going to allow it or permit it, you could put some requirements around.
Okay.
I was actually surprised when you told me that there was no ordinance or rule against smoking at town parks. I coached soccer for 15 years, and if I saw a parent doing that on the sidelines, I shut it down because I don't think that's the right thing to be showing kids at our town parks. But I guess I misspoke because I told them it was an ordinance. Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that Commissioner Flagg brought up. As I look at this documents and try and like break it down, it looks like the decision tree is either one, zoning to prohibit cannabis establishment uses, or two, zoning to allow uses. We're talking recreational, right? So if we go with one, we're not really prohibiting establishments, we're banning the use of recreational cannabis, right? The only way that you can use it would
banning
be,
the sale of it, is what you're banning.
say again?
You're banning the sale of it in your community. It doesn't mean it can't be used by people in the community. The law allows it, the law allows 21 and older to use it, but what you're dealing is the land use part of it.
Okay, so it's like, you know, when I lived in Philadelphia, we went into New Jersey to buy liquor because you could buy it there at a younger age, so that kind of thing. People in South Windsor would go to a neighboring town.
Correct, it's not
Because it's not sold here. So I guess the point I want to get to, again, touch on what Commissioner Flagg was saying, if we were to ban the sale of it, and that turns out to be a very unpopular decision, we wouldn't have known that. To me, this is something that the voters should make decisions on. Now, I say that, I mean, is this like a referendum issue? I don't know. But it feels like it's bigger than what a land use commission should be deciding.
Yeah. Well, we would have a public hearing, of course, if we
Okay.
put something forward. But I do understand what you're saying. And, you know, I don't think it would be a bad idea for a referendum to happen about this. But, you know, in a referendum, basically, you ask a question and it's a yes or no answer.
Correct.
This actually has a couple different variables, but, you know, for the medical part of it, I do think, you know, it's already allowed. That's not going to change. The sale of that in South Windsor is not going to change. Correct, Michelle? Right.
It is licensed, so yes.
Right. So if, after the first of the year, if somebody else wanted to open up a medical marijuana place in South Windsor, sales, they would still be allowed to, correct, Michelle?
If you have nothing in place prohibiting it, and if you haven't put a regulation in place saying that you allow it by special permit, then it would be any other permitted use, retail use like a liquor store. So it'd be an as-of-right use in many of your zones.
Right. But if we prohibited sales, we can still allow the production of it, and we could still allow the medical marijuana sales.
Well, that's already legal,
Right.
right? That's,
Right,
we can't undo that.
right.
But the paperwork did talk about a hybrid solution where providers of medical marijuana could also be providers of recreational marijuana. And I could see the value in that because supposedly they're going to be, you know, legitimate, credible retailers.
Right.
One other question, Michelle. I can't find it in my paperwork, but I remember reading something to the effect that the model would be a seller for every X thousands of households.
No, it's based on population, so you're
okay.
allowed one per 25,000 and you round up. So our community, which sits just shy of 27,000, would be allowed two.
So was that like a recommendation, or is that?
No, that's in the law.
That's in the law. So if we moved ahead with it, we would have two.
That would be
our
the
limit.
maximum
Two.
that would be able to
If
be
only one
licensed.
did it, then we
Yeah.
only have one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just briefly touch on the referendum piece of it. There is a part of the law, and I was trying to find the reference, where the community can get enough signatures to force a referendum. And I think Southington, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the communities that was doing that. So there is an opportunity for the public to generate signatures and force a community to take a referendum. I just wish I could find it and give you the reference. It's a lot of paperwork here.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I'd just point out that there's not enough time to set up a referendum for the November election. So a referendum most easily would happen next November, although you could have a scheduled, like we did with the schools, on a separate date. But I think we probably need to act prior to November next year. And if someone wants to come in with a referendum, let's say we allow it, if they want to have a referendum to forbid it, or a question, they could do that by the necessary petition process. And then the voters would agree or not that they wanted to prohibit it. So I guess that's all I had for now, yeah.
Okay. Steve, you had a suggestion that we do a moratorium, and I'm just wondering, would that moratorium possibly just be on the sale of marijuana or cannabis in South Windsor?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. I think the sale is the more complicated issue.
Right.
The production, we already know how it's done. I assume that the production be done the same way as a medical, in a building with a proper security. So I see no reason not to allow in the industrial area, wherever they can make medical marijuana, allow the recreational marijuana to be produced in an interior. By the way, the Energy Committee today had a little discussion about how much energy a facility like that uses and how we might require them to have solar on the rooftop and other things. So, yeah, I would agree with you. The moratorium would be on the sale if we have it. I would keep it short. We don't need a lot of time. Maybe June 30th would be a good end date for the moratorium.
Well, just if you think for a minute here about it, if the legislative body gets together, they might not put anything in effect until July 1st. So, and if they run over, I'm really thinking 1 year.
You know, if you did a year, it doesn't mean you have to take a year. In other words,
Right.
you could go forward with a regulation come March if you were ready to.
Yeah.
Just
Yep,
I
that's a
didn't
good
think the
point.
legislature needs to do anything else. Wouldn't it be a regulator, the OPM, or?
Well, I'm not sure if the legislators are setting the rules or if it's OPM or DCP. I'm not sure.
But I think a year is also no problem, especially if we have the option of ending it anytime we come up with our own regulations. So I do think that there's an incentive. The sales tax incentive is kind of nice. So the longer we delay, the more other towns will get the business and we won't. But probably not a reason to rush things. So.
Okay, Commissioner Bonzani?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of strong public opinion both ways on the sale. Obviously, I think we're definitely talking about the sale of this cannabis here in South Windsor. I think there's going to be a lot of public discussion either way, that we allow the sale or we don't allow the sale in South Windsor. I mean, it's, there's definitely a lot of thought about this, and I think the public should definitely have a say in which way we go.
I hope they do move forward if they do have an interest in having part of the decision, that they do move forward, with a petition to do a referendum. Myself, I can go either way on this. I mean, it's legal now. It's like alcohol. If we did nothing, it would probably be in our planning and zoning regs the same way as alcohol. So, other than that, Alan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. We were talking about referendums, for example, for this. I'm not going to say I'm going to caution against it, but I'd rather, just, like mention, have it go through public hearing and have people come up and speak about it. I think that's the best course of action for a topic like this.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but, with that, you're really just getting the people who know about the issue and who have a strong opinion and come forward. Whereas if it was a referendum, then you get the consensus of the community. Commissioner Bernstein?
So this appearing on our agenda, what's our requirement? Are we supposed to provide a point of view to the town council, or just do what we're doing?
We're acting as our body.
I'm sorry?
We're acting as our body.
Okay.
So, it's up to us to decide, what we're gonna do, if we're just gonna let it become law as of the 1st, if we wanna do a moratorium, and what the moratorium would be on. So,
Okay.
Commissioner Foley?
I think a one-year moratorium at this point. Let us learn, okay? Let's learn from the other communities as well. Let's not jump into something, okay? Enfield just had their planning and zoning, they just had a big hearing, and that was just the other day. Southington's going through it right now. Let's walk slow and make the right decisions. Let's give it some time. We don't need to jump into this tonight, but I do think a public hearing at the time is gonna, be a beginning, but I would rather see a referendum.
Okay. Well, what would happen is, even if we're going slow, regardless of what we're doing, we're still gonna have a public hearing
Correct.
unless we don't do anything. And I
Correct.
don't-
If
I
you
don't-
decide to go forward with a moratorium, that you have to enact that after you hold a public hearing. So
Right.
you might even get some feedback, initial feedback at a moratorium public hearing, whether or not people think it's a good idea or not.
Yep. Commissioner Flagg?
I think everybody agrees on having a public hearing on this thing. But the moratorium would give you a little bit of time on this, to figure out what other people are saying and so on and so forth, because I really think when the public hearing comes in on this, that there's going to be an awful lot of people that come in and they're going to have a lot to say. So I think the moratorium for, a few months will be worthwhile.
Well, it wouldn't be for a few months. It would be from between 7 and
Right,
12 months.
correct,
So, okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
right.
So, commissioners, I'm hearing the consensus is we'd like to move forward with a one-year moratorium. Commissioner Bernstein?
So I was just going to lay out, I think, where you're headed. 1 year? Or I thought you just said 7 to 12 months?
It could be 7 to 12 months, but I'm suggesting a year, and if we end up acting on it before that, hey, great.
1 year moratorium, public hearings.
Yes.
Okay,
There'll have to be a text amendment, and I'm sure that Michelle, with input from legal, will be able to prepare something like that. You're all set now?
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm probably the liberal in this court, and I would be good with that, so that's probably a consensus, would be
Okay.
my guess.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have a public hearing when we do the moratorium. We might get a feeling for how people think then.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, when we draft regulations, we'll have another public hearing, so.
Okay. So that is the consensus, everybody, if I can, okay. You good with that, Bill? Okay. Okay.
So with that understanding, I will prepare language to send off to CROG to start our 35-day timetable with CROG, and then we'll look to maybe the October meeting, or we'll figure out the public hearing date, but it'd be
Okay.
latter
great.
part of October, most likely.
Okay, now our next item on our agenda is discussion regarding a residential moratorium. I'm still in favor of moving forward with a residential moratorium. We're a growing community, we're growing really quick. That's not always a good thing because it doesn't always allow our regulations to keep up with us. We've made changes in our regulations, and some of them need some tweaking. And I think that a one-year moratorium on development of multifamily housing, whether it be a housing development or apartments, condos, anything like that, would be a good thing at this time. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this? Commissioner Bernstein?
So I know we've discussed this a number of times, and my somewhat vague recollection of one of the times it was discussed with the attorney present was that this would have to be an across-the-board moratorium of everything,
All housing,
all housing.
correct.
Okay. And you're thinking 1 year?
1 year.
Okay, thank you.
1 year is an established period. We would have time to clean up our regulations. We would have time to have our housing plan in effect, which we're working on now. But we have, Michelle, we have to have that housing plan completed by what, next June?
July 1st of 2022, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
2023 or 2022? 2022. Okay, I thought I heard 3, okay. So, yeah, 1 year. Any other commissioners want to speak on this, or your feeling? Commissioner Wagner?
I see no need for a moratorium. I don't see why we can't work on our housing plan while we continue to process whatever applications come forward. If there are things that need to be fixed, we should fix them, but I'd be against having a moratorium.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues, Steve, we have is when we have an application coming in, it's very tough to change the regulations when we have applications, and we keep getting applications. So this would give us a chance to catch our breath, put forward all the regulations that we want to change. In fact, really think about them, hash them out, make some of the changes. One of them might be a buffer requirement where residential comes into like multifamily or whatever, or next to industrial. And I'm not going to talk about any particular applications. But that's been a conflict. I'm sure it's going to be a conflict going forward. So
why don't we just fix it?
it's not that easy.
I mean,
It's-
applications that are already here, you can't.
You've got maybe 50 items like that. If you were to fix them, it's like you're going to address each individual one, and you're going to have a public hearing on each individual one. You have to do it all together, and if you're not doing it quickly and effectively, it's not going to get done.
I would do them all then. I guess I just don't see the role of I don't see the need for a moratorium.
Okay.
We can modify those regulations, continue to do business. You know, if the application comes in before the change is approved, they don't apply to that application.
Yep.
If the application comes in after it's approved, it applies.
Well, I've been talking about getting some type of component in for affordable housing. for a while now, and we still haven't done it, and we keep having applications come forward. If we're gonna protect South Windsor, then it's something that we've got to do now. We've got to get it in there. And like I said, and I've mentioned it in the past, I'd like to see a 10% affordable component at the 80% level, and I'd like to see a 10% component at the 60% level.
So
And-
why haven't we drafted regulation changes to make that happen?
Because there are other actions that have to happen also. And it's not just that one thing. There's school growth. There's a lot of issues out there. And it's time that South Windsor takes a breath and moves forward with a moratorium so that we can do what we got to do.
You know, I mean, we talk
I
about
agree with you,
huge,
Mark.
we talk about huge growth. We only had 1,000 people between the 10-year period, the two censuses. We had a growth of 1,000 people, so, you know.
I think it's time to hang the no vacancy sign for a little bit. Let the cleaning people, it's just like a hotel, okay? It's time to clean the room. Let's take some time. Let's go through our regs, okay? It's about quality, not quantity, okay? Let's take a breath. Let's let our schools, okay? Right now, Pleasant Valley School hasn't even been built out yet, okay? It's not even out to bid. And I got a funny feeling, just like Eli Terry, they're gonna be coming back to us for an addition already, okay? Let's slow down, okay? Let's let our schools, okay? That's what we pride our community on many things, but our school is the, whatever we're ranked, I don't know what it is, but we're in the top in the state and in the region. Let's slow down. We're getting built out, and we're losing control. And again, it's about quality, not quantity. Let's clean up our regulations, put things in, because we just keep getting bombarded with apartments and apartments and apartments. And again, we don't have the affordable housing component in place. I agree with you. I think we need to put the moratorium in place, and let's get a chance to get things cleaned up.
Okay. I'm going to give Commissioner Flagg a chance over here.
I agree wholeheartedly with the moratorium. If you talk to some Board of Education members, they say, our schools are fine and we've still got room in them. If you talk to some of the teachers, some of the people that work in the schools, they say, we are loaded and there is no place to put hardly any more, okay? If you talk to some of the fire department people, we're using mutual aid more and more and more, okay? And it's gonna come to the point where if we swell up, you're talking about a paid fire department, you're talking about portables in all the schools, brand new schools we're paying millions of dollars for right now. All of the sewers and everything, and all the new pumping stations that are gonna have to go in and everything else like that. It's something that needs to be looked at, and you need to get some answers, all right? And a moratorium would do that. And that's why I believe we should have a moratorium. There's too much. The builders don't care. The builders want to come in. South Windsor's number 12. Let's build more houses and everything else. And, you know, but you can't rush into something like this. I mean, I think you gotta really look at it logistically. If you want to really try and save your town, you've got to stop and look at what you're doing for a little bit.
Okay. Commissioner Cavagnaro?
I'll have to agree with Commissioner Wagner on this one. I'm not for the moratorium at this moment. In my opinion, it's not the right thing to do at the moment, like I said. So that was just on my mind. I'd rather share because I know I'm not in the majority on this one. I just don't see a reason why at the moment we should move into a moratorium for housing. And if we really are concerned with the amount of kids that are in classrooms, for example, we could reach out to the superintendent. So yeah, that's just all I have to say.
Well, just to talk about that briefly, is I saw an article in the paper regarding the Board of Ed and what their future plans are, and they're going to be formulating probably a new 10-year plan once the new Board of Ed gets in office. That plan isn't going to be in effect day one. They're going to have to formulate it, get all their statistics, everything else, find out what the growth rates are. It's not something that happens overnight. So a moratorium would help them, give them some time also. I mean, that's not the whole reason I want to do it, but it definitely, I think, would help out. Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah,
He had his light on before.
so I'm not predisposed one way or the other, but what I would really like to hear would be compelling arguments on both sides, which I think could be brought in public hearings. This would be something that would go to public hearings, would it not? Where builders and developers and people on the no moratorium side could come in and, you know, present ideas and thoughts that haven't been voiced here, so that this would go to public hearings.
That would be part of the process,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
We would have to have a draft text amendment and then move forward with public hearings, and then at that point make a decision. So Commissioner Dexter?
Well, I think it's the first time ever I'm going to agree with Steve. But one of my core values is smaller government. And if I'm a landowner and somebody tells me I can't subdivide or sell my land because there's a moratorium on housing, and I'm at 68, 69 years old and I want to retire, I think that's an intrusion of their rights. And I understand what you're trying to say. It's only a year. We want to get our act together. If we stop giving away tax abatements to big business and we take some of that tax money and support the schools because the kids are going to come, I think we can do it. People in big jobs, superintendent and so forth, I think they can figure it out. So Bart, I'm sorry, I don't support a housing moratorium.
Commissioner Bonsanti?
Yeah, sometimes you just, like some of the other commissioners, you got to take a step back. And, you know, I've been on this commission for a long time, and it just seems like building and building and building, apartments. And you talk to teachers, like Commissioner Flagg said, and they're just telling you that the schools are busting. And sometimes you just got to take a step back and change and just look at everything. I'm a big school person, and I think the moratorium would help settle it a little bit and see where we're at, you know, see what schools, I don't know if we can put some regulations in certain parts of town that the schools are really busting out with kids. I am for a moratorium. 1 year, I'm sorry, Steph, but 1 year is quick. 1 year goes by so fast, and it gives us a chance to change, you know, check our regulations. Affordable housing is big. We really haven't looked at that, and we have to look at that. I just think it's time to step back, and you know, one commissioner said, just ask the superintendent, you know, how schools are crowded. It's just not that easy. It just changes daily. It changes weekly, and it's just time to take a step back, see where we're at, and you know, 1 year goes by quick, and I just think it's time to see where we're at.
Okay. So, just moving forward at this time, just sitting at the table right now, it looks like we're about 4 and 4. But of the elected commissioners, I believe the majority want to move forward with a moratorium. So I understand your point of view, Steph, and yeah, it's a principle thing. But I've looked at what I think is best for South Windsor. And that's the biggest principle for me right now.
Bart, we would have a public hearing.
Right.
And if this chamber were full and we do that straw poll, I don't know if we do that, I know council.
We don't do
we
straw
don't do
polls
that.
of the
All right, but
audience.
We got the feeling from folks who spoke that they don't want it. Would we listen? As tough as it would be?
We would definitely listen, that's part of our job. And after that, we would make a decision.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm not positive it would even be this commission by the time we throw language together, we put a text amendment, we would send that to CROG, correct or no? Okay. CROG, we got to do our public notice, we got to have a hearing or two.
Make sure our town attorney's involved.
Yep, could be a new commission, but at this time, that's, I think, what the best direction. Okay? Steve?
I just would say that we all are trying to do what's best for the town of South Windsor, not just you, okay? So keep in mind that every single person here, regardless of their opinion, is trying to do the best thing for South Windsor.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. Okay. So we'll put some language together for,
Yeah, I'll put some language together and I'll, make sure the town attorney takes a look at it and I'll get it out to you folks.
okay, great. Okay, what's next on our agenda? We have any bonds? We did? I didn't,
Believe you have some in front of you tonight.
was there? Oh, here it is. Okay. Addendum to agenda, applications to be officially received. Okay. On the big page, we've got some landscaping bonds. Anybody want to run with these? Commissioner Dexter.
Okay, let's start with the landscaping bonds. 09-37P, New Way Solar. Started out at 2,500, reducing 2,500, balance zero.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Landscaping bond 18-29P, Harbor Chase. $20,000, reduced by 15,000, leaving a $5,000 balance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Landscaping bond 17-01P, Empire Auto, $5,000, reducing by 5,000, leaving a balance of zero.
We have a motion. Do we
You
have a
want to hit
second?
the, in the wetlands bond also, the stormwater bond?
Sure. Inland Wetlands, 1701P, Empire Auto Stormwater, $5,000, reducing by 5,000, also balance of zero.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Landscaping bond 19-19P, Truth Baptist Church, $5,000, reducing by $5,000, balance of zero.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Who was that? Was that you, Paul? Okay, Commissioner Bernstein, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Lastly, landscaping bond 19-38P, The Learning Experience, amount 5,000, reduction 5,000, balance of zero.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we had one set of minutes. If there were no corrections, we can accept these by consensus. Agreed? Okay. Okay, old business, Michelle.
I don't have anything other than just to let you know, we'll be having public hearings in 2 weeks. The Kilkenny Heights is back in front of you in 2 weeks. I do have a packet I'm going to give you on your way out. That's the plans that you did approve a year ago. The reasons in front of you is they did not post a bond in the time that they needed to, so I'm not sure what kind of public input we'll have on that, but it's back in front of the public hearing. We also are going to have South Windsor Stone and Landscaping on next week related to the screening operations that they would like to add on the site. And then the third application is the temporary and conditional permit to add some recreational fields behind the Revolutions site on Bidwell Road. The Talbot Lane project, which is, I know, of a lot of public interest out there, that is still going to public hearings. It's on its third public hearing, I think on October 6th. We're kind of monitoring that situation before we start our public hearing, just so that we don't have the public having to come out in the same week more than once. So we probably will start our public hearing either the second or fourth Tuesday in October, depending on what happens the 6th.
Okay, and once they close, we have 35 days to act on that?
No, what we have is, we have until November, I think on your sheet, it's like something like November 18th, just under the
20th, it says
statutory
here.
allowances.
Yep.
If it takes a very long time before wetlands takes action, we have 35 days from the wetlands action to take action. So if, in other words, you run out of statutory time and you're still not within, past the 35 days, you have a little bit more time. So we're monitoring that closely, and we'll make sure that we don't miss any of our deadlines.
Okay. Because I'm seeing that possibly coming around like
Yeah, no,
December.
we don't,
Yeah.
we don't want to do that, so.
Okay. I think that concludes our business. If anyone would like to, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? We have motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.